Hi kids, this is video 1 of a 4-part video series on how to use time transition words. It's very important to watch all videos in order because each video builds on the skills that you learned in the one before. Parents, please make sure that your child has paper and pencil available for today's activities. Road signs are very important. What do we use road signs for? They help us reach a destination, just like transition words help us reach a destination in a sentence. What does this road sign tell us? Think about it for just a moment. This road sign tells us to be careful in school zones and watch out for children crossing the road. You might see them in other places, such as a library area or a park area, but usually they're found in school zones. Think about for a moment, what does this road sign tell you? This road sign tells us that there are no bikes allowed on this road or street or maybe even a sidewalk. What does this road sign tell us? This road sign tells us there's a curve up ahead and we need to be careful and not drive more than 20 miles an hour to stay safe. What does this road sign tell you? This road sign tells us to be careful. You can make a U-turn with caution. Just as these road signs have helped us get safely to a destination, authors also use transition words. Writers have a special item that help them guide the reader through their story, and that special item is called a transition word. We're going to be learning about time transition words. Time transition words help us guide the reader through the story and help to keep the story organized in the correct order. Just like road signs tell us where to go or what to do, the time transition words help the reader know the direction of the story. These time transition words help the reader move through the story in a sequential manner. Sequential. You might not be sure of what that word means, but it means to do something in a sequence. What happens first, second, third, or next, or last? There's lots of words that we can use to help us move through a story in a sequential manner. Here are a few transition words that you might run across. Meanwhile, as soon as, shortly after that. For example, our sentence tells us, meanwhile, the students were all reading their vocabulary practice sheets because as soon as the teacher finished marking attendance, the vocabulary test would begin. Think about it and talk with your family about why you wouldn't use a word like last. The students were all reading their vocabulary practice sheets because as soon as the teacher finished marking attendance, the vocabulary test would begin. Would last make sense in that sentence? Would you know what happened before that? What are some other words you might use instead of meanwhile or as soon as? You can pause the video and talk with your family about this. Here are some more words. At that very moment, soon, before long. Before long, all of the animals returned to the burned out forest, and soon they would begin to remake their homes. So why do you think the author uses the transition before long at the beginning of the sentence? You can pause the video and talk about this with your family. While this was happening, eventually, and after that. While this was happening, no one was watching the balloons, and eventually they all floated away far past the city limits. How does the transition words help you paint the picture of what's going on? I know I can close my eyes and I can just see the balloons floating away and way up into the sky and imagine them floating past the city limits. Those transition words help you see that picture as it's happening in the order that it's happening. Immediately, later the same day, at last. Later the same day, I returned the overdue books to the library, and at last I had cleared out my room of all library books, and I was free of debt. Why wouldn't you use a transition word as early that morning I returned the overdue books? If you were cleaning your room, you would not have it cleaned by early in the morning. Earlier, not a moment too soon, an hour later. These are all transition words or phrases. An hour later, I was finished practicing my piano lesson, and not a moment too soon because my best friend Alice called to invite me to a movie. During all of this, along the way, without delay. Along the way, I noticed there was poison ivy on the trail, and without delay, I carefully took a shower when I arrived home. During all of this, along the way, without delay. Along the way, I noticed there was poison ivy on the trail, and without delay, I carefully took a shower when I arrived home. So, why does the author use the time transition word in the middle of the sentence, without delay? If we took that out of the sentence, it would just say, along the way, I noticed there was poison ivy on the trail, and I carefully took a shower when I arrived home. So when you add without delay in, it gives you a little more information and it makes the sentence more interesting to the reader. Makes you want to keep reading to find out what happens. And that's what we use a lot of time transition words for, is to move the reader through the story. As the writer writes the story, he wants to make it interesting so that you can put the story together in the proper order and paint that picture in your mind as you're reading the story. With your family, you can make a list of time transition words and keep them available as we go through the other videos in this series, because we'll be using some time transition words to write our own sentences in each of the videos coming up. So take time to think about words that are time transition words or phrases that you could use in your writing. I look forward to talking to you again in video 2.